I titled my message this morning, Running Blindfolded. I don't know if you've ever had that experience where maybe you were playing a game or you're just being crazy and trying some stuff you never tried before and you blindfolded yourself and became entertainment for the people around you. I don't know if you've ever had that happen, but I'm telling you, it's awesome to watch. It is awesome to watch because it's one, it's entertaining. Two, it's you're laughing because you know that you don't want to do it because you would look stupid, and so you enjoy someone else looking stupid, right? And so, but when you watch it, the funny thing is the underlying theme is the people that are blindfolded have no sense of direction. I mean, they walk different. They posture themselves different, and that's why I say it's entertaining, because when you're blindfolded, you're not sure of what's in front of you or what's beside you or what's around you, and it's amazing sometimes. Even, I don't know if I have steps that go into my garage. I go out the back door and there's a few steps and there's a walkway going into the garage, and sometimes I need to run to the garage for something. Maybe I forgot something in there, and I don't bother turning on the light. It's dark, and I know there's 3 steps. But somehow you forget that you counted 3 already, and you think you're on the 3rd one. And you ever caught yourself where you jolt yourself because you expect another step, but there's not one there? It almost like takes your back out. It's like, oh man, I'm glad it was dark. No one could watch that happen, because you can't see. You can't make correct judgments. You're blind. The same thing happens when our vision is obscured. You don't even have to be blindfolded, but when your vision is obscured, you can't make right judgments. Your depth perception is wrong. I mean, it's funny to watch that happen when people are like, it's like, well, it's easy, it's just straight. But when your vision is obstructed, you don't know that. Your brain is trying to compute some stuff that your body is trying to line up with, and sometimes it's a delayed reaction. And so I want to talk about running blindfolded. It's not so much we want to do that, but it's rather we don't want to do that, because it really makes a mess of things. And the simplest thing is when we run blindfolded, all we do is have to take off the blindfolds, and then we can see effectively what's around us. And it's amazing how our perspective changes when we see clearly. And so I want to talk about running blindfolded. We shouldn't run blindfolded. And in Hebrews chapter 12, there's 2 verses that I want to read this morning that really, I think, capture that idea of we're not to run blindfolded. We're to run with clear perspective and see things. Because I want to tell you this morning, church. God's intent when He created us is He wants us and designed us to succeed in whatever we do. And in order for us to succeed and do well, we need to have right perspective, because I've used illustration before where I've put on sunglasses, and if you could put on real yellow sunglasses, when you first put it on, everything looks yellow. Man, everything looks yellow. No matter what you look at, even though it's color, it's everything's yellow. But if you give it some time, your eyes get used to that color, and you don't see yellow anymore until you take them off, and it's like, whoa. It's amazing how our perspective influences how we view things, how we make choices, and how we ultimately act. And so blindfolded is one of those ways of really shooting at things at the dark, really not knowing what we're doing and not knowing our what's in front of us, and we just give it our best shot. And sometimes we live our life following Jesus, just doing our best. It's just a shot in the dark. We just want to do our best when God's created more out of us than just doing what we can. He wants us to succeed at whatever we do. And so I want to talk about living without blindfolds and how we can be successful and be the people that God's created us to be. In Hebrews chapter 12, starting verse 1, I'm going to read 2 verses, and I'm going to make some comments about it, and then I want to sum it all up of how we can live without blindfolds and really get a clear perspective of what's around us. In Hebrews chapter 12, starting at verse 1, it says, Therefore, since we've been surrounded by such a huge cloud of witnesses. Now, before I go any further, I think it's important for us to understand some of the wordage that's being used here, because it really is portraying an important picture that I think we need to grab hold of. He says, therefore, since we're surrounded by such a huge cloud of witnesses. The word there in the Greek language is paramikemoi, which really is the idea of expressing that there's things laying around everywhere. No matter where you look, they're just laying around everywhere. It's almost like, when you have grandkids and they all come over and they leave and you wave and there's toys laying around everywhere. Or, even better, you have teenage kids and you open the door to wake them up in the morning to go to school, and it's like you see things everywhere. That's the idea here in expressing this whole idea that since you're surrounded by such a huge cloud of witnesses, they're laying around. It's interesting, when I was going through that passage of Scripture, I thought it's interesting that he starts chapter 12 and verse 1 with that phrase. Because the key to us succeeding, listen carefully, the key to us succeeding in life, reaching our goals, reaching what God intended us to accomplish and to become, we can't do it alone. We can't do it alone. We need people around us. Granted, the right people, but we need them around us. We can't go at life alone. We can't face what we face. We can't make the decisions that we can make alone. We need people around us. And it's interesting when he talks about that right at the beginning chapter. He says, hey, we're surrounded by a cloud and a room and an atmosphere full of people that have gone through what we've gone through, that have faced what we faced. And they have pushed through and accomplished what they have been accomplished. He says in chapter 12, verse 1, therefore, since we're surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses to the life of faith, we can't do it alone. We need the right people around us. How many of has experience where you've had wrong people around you? And all of us have stories of having the wrong people around us. I want to say this. Don't let the wrong people that were around you discourage you enough that you don't find the right people. It's easy to get discouraged in life. It's easy because of what we go through, what we face. It's easy just to say, you know what? I don't think anybody really cares. All they see is negative. And I want to encourage you this morning, don't allow those wrong people that happen to be in your life discourage you enough to surround you with the right people. It's worth searching and looking for, because it'll mean the difference between success or dragging your feet trying to succeed. He says, therefore. It's interesting, he goes on and he continues to broaden this picture. He says, we're surrounded by such a huge cloud of witnesses, champions, people that have gone before us, people that have pushed through, people that have demonstrated that they can go through and rise to the top on the other side. And so it's an encouragement. He says, and then he says this, he says, let us strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that so easily trips us up. And then he says, let us run with endurance the race that God has marked before us. Let me just talk about that a little bit, because I'm really building something here I want us to grasp. So he's talking about, hey, we're not alone. We got the right people around us. We have champions around us to help us through and to speak life and to help us walk through the things we need to walk through. He says we're surrounded. They're laying around all over. It's amazing. Sometimes you can have so many people in and around your life, but you still got to find the right ones. And then he says, let's strip off every weight that slows us down. I don't know about you, but sometimes there's things in our life that just, it seems like we drag our feet. We're trying hard, but there's always something hooking and slowing us down. And he recognizes that's reality. So he encourages them to strip it off. It's interesting, the word strip there means to take off and with purpose and never to pick it up again. The idea is when you, let's say, because we're in Saskatchewan and we know our winters can really be cold, and so it's a minus 40 below day and we're bundled up to the core, and we're outside, we've done some stuff, and we go inside for a coffee or whatever else, and all of a sudden we realize we start burning up. We start getting hot. So what do? We start stripping off stuff. We strip off our toque and our scarf and our jacket. Before we know, our ski pants are gone, boots are off. That's what he's talking about, the stuff that's holding us back, that easily just hinders us. He said, let's strip it off. You know what encourages me? We don't have to live with those things that are holding us back. We don't have to live with those things holding us back. We can strip them off. And sometimes if we're surrounded by the right type of people, they'll help us do that very thing. So he says, the weight that slows us down, let's strip it off, especially the sin that so easily trips us up. Now remember, a few weeks ago I talked about the word sin. Now, a lot of times we associate the word sin as negative and bad and guilt and all this kind of stuff, and I said it's nothing to do with that. Actually, it's a term used when they were training soldiers to shoot arrows, and they would have a specific target, and when they would miss that target, the word sin was used. It was not negative. It was used as, hey, we'll come along, we'll make a few adjustments, and you're going to hit it every time. So he says the things that get us off target, the things that we're intending but it's not happening, he says especially those things that easy trips us up. He says let's work on those things, because then he encourages us further on in the verse and says, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. You know what that tells me, folks? The race or the life set before us is not necessarily going to be easy. He says, let's run with endurance. The word endurance is an interesting word because it really expresses that of staying the course, being immovable. Yes, there's things that go on in our life. Let's be real. There's stuff, a lot of poopy stuff that happens. And sometimes that stuff we can't help because it's someone else's poop, but it gets on us. See, some of you are getting that. I could use other words, and I wasn't sure I'd get letters, I think, but I think poopy is an okay word to use. Sometimes that gets on us, and it's like well, I never started this mess. Why am I in it? And we're in the middle of it. And we wonder why. It's like, if I would have known that, I would have never hung around this person, right? Because now I got his mess on me or her mess on me, and we end up cleaning, and then we mull and we think, well, if I just would have known that, I wouldn't have been around. And instead of just cleaning ourselves off, stripping it off and cleaning ourselves off, we stay there and we reminisce and we I wish, and now I'm disappointed. He just says, hey, let's just get rid of that stuff. Let's run with endurance. Let's not slow down. Let's not stop and park. Let's keep pace. Let's be stable. Let's keep rolling here. Let's keep making decisions and grinding through stuff, because sometimes it is grinding through stuff. Let's be real. Sometimes it's down work, hard work. Right? Let's remove and take that stuff off. Not, listen here, endurance, not easily swerved. You ever, I'm telling some truths here now. Have you ever driven down the highway and you started daydreaming and you realize you kind of came to and you see grass and you have to swerve? It's probably never happened to you, I'm sure. It usually doesn't happen to me unless someone else is driving, but no. We swerve. Why? Because we think something's there and we swerve. The word endurance is here, not easily swerved. So that tells me you know where you're going. Yes, there's obstacles. Yes, there's things around you, but you know where you're going and you're not easily swerved. I like that. Not easily swerved. Or you can be driving to Regina or Saskatoon or on holidays, and if you had a long day and you're getting really sleepy, and someone beside you is fast asleep, supposed to help me, and you nod, and all of a sudden, whoop, swerve. Are you okay? Yeah, I'm perfectly fine. What's the problem, right? He says we're to let us run. Let's run with endurance. Not easily swerved, not easily moved. The idea of perseverance. I like to use that word and say it's stubborn, but it's not. You just know where you're going. And you're okay with the bumps and the curves because you know where you're going. That's what he says. That's what, let's run with endurance. The race that God has set before us. I want to tell you this morning. The race that God has set before us is winnable. Yes. Have some bumps, but He set it before us because He's created us to succeed. Let's go on a little further. So He says, hey, we're surrounded by the right people, man. People that have gone through and pushed through. He says, hey, let's strip off this stuff that just slows us down. Let's the stuff that gets us off target and trips us up. Let's remove that. Let's take it off and let's run with endurance. There's a difference between running when you're afraid and running with purpose. You see, when you're running when you're afraid, you run away. But when you run with purpose and know where you're going, you're running towards the goal. I never liked running in high school. I mean, I was good at it sometimes because half the time I was scared of the teachers, so I ran real good. But I remember one time, that was back in the day when we had dentists in school. How many remember that? Had a dental office in the school, and roll call, and everybody had to go through there. Well, my term came, and I thought, no way on earth am I ever going to see the dentist again. And so what do Saskatchewan boys do in high school? You go outside and play hockey. And I remember faithful perseverance, endurance of this dental doctor, whatever you call those. Dentist, there we go. Called my name. I ignored. Called my name. I ignored him. No way was I going. Called my name. No way. I was just as stubborn as they were. Finally, she comes onto the ice and says, Jeffrey Thiessen, I'm not going to ask you another time. Come with me. Okay, I guess that was it. It worked. I went to see her, and she did what she needed to do. I even forget my point was. Run with endurance, I guess. I don't know. You get over mid-40s, I guess that stuff happens to you. I don't know. I love it, though, because I get an excuse. I don't remember. Sorry, I don't know. Run with endurance, not swerved and easily moved, but you can persevere, even though things are tough. Then he goes into verse 2, and in verse 2, he gives us the reason, or he gives us how we can do what he just talked about. I love that about sometimes when God speaks. It's not, he doesn't just tell us what needs to change, but he shows us how we can effectively do that. Why? Because he wants us to succeed. He doesn't want us to fail. And so in verse 2, he goes on to this. The question I have to ask is, how do we do this? How do we strip that stuff off? How do we not get off target and deal with the stuff that trips us up? How do we surround ourselves with the right people? How do we know that what I'm going through is going to be for my benefit and my good? Because that's what God promises. But sometimes when I'm going through that stuff, I don't see the benefit of it because sometimes I just don't understand where I'm going. And when I don't understand where I'm going, I'm going to stop. And at times I get blindfolded and I try on my own. So how does he do this? In verse 2, he really sums it up really well, briefly here. And he goes and he gives us that he gives us that answer to those questions. He says in verse 2, he says, after all these things, he said, verse 2, we do this by. Don't you love that? We do this by. One of the frustrations that I had in school was it always like, it's not a good answer. Like, who cares? Explain to me. Tell me in black and white. Don't talk in scientific language. It doesn't help me very much. How do we do this? He says, we do this by. It's like, okay, the answer's coming. What's the answer? How do we succeed in life? How do we not run blindfolded? We do this by, and then he says this, keeping our eyes on Jesus, the champion who initiates and perfects our faith. Because of the joy awaiting him, he endured the cross, regardless of its shame, and now we sit in a place of honor beside God's throne. So this is how we accomplish it. I said before that God intends us to succeed. This race he set before us is winnable. It's achievable. It's something that will bring us what God's created in us to. So how do we do that? I think there's three things here that I can just quickly pull out of here that I think we can grab hold of how we can guarantee success in our life, that we won't go through life blindfolded and guessing and wondering where we're going. The first thing he says is we've got to have the right focus. So much in our life, and I'm talking from experience, the things we go through, our upbringing, the stuff we've been exposed to, the things we learned growing up, the stuff that we had to deal with when things fell apart, all those things, if not in proper focus or perspective, is going to shape and mold us to see life a certain way. That's why it's important for us to have the right focus, because our focus always determines our direction. Why can one person wake up and think, whoo, I'm waiting for life? The same day, the same hour, the next person can wake up and go, oh my goodness, not this again. It's perspective. Sometimes someone can speak something and the computer in here brings it in and processes it, and then we see it a certain way. How are we guaranteed success in this life of faith? We've got to have the right focus. He challenges us in verse 2. He says, this is how we do it, by keeping our eyes on Jesus. You see, he's the one that set this race or this life before us. He's the one that put us where we're at. And he is the best one to help us through the various stages that we have to go through. But we can't do it if we don't have the right focus. I remember driver training one time, and that too was in high school. You know, we had driver training, and the driver instructor came and took us, and we had a lot of classroom stuff. It's like, great, most people don't care about the classroom stuff. Let's get behind the wheel, let's drive. And then you get behind the wheel and drive, and you realize maybe I should have paid a little bit more attention to class. But you figure that out as you go, because oftentimes they have their own little brake on their side, and if they're scared, they'll just put the brake on. It's like, I had one of my friends didn't realize what was happening, so he stepped on it, and it did a couple of brake torques, and the driver trainer looked at it, stop that! I didn't know I was braking, so I was giving it more gas, and it was just, it's like, stop that! But we didn't know. She had a brake on her side. Oftentimes she would tell us, you're not focused. You're all over the road. You see, we think it's easy. When we're not experienced, we think it's easy. It's like we can just go do it. That's not a problem. And then we've got the responsibility, and it's like, I remember when I first got my driver's license, I drove 10 to 2. No way would I ever take one hand off the wheel, because if I did, it would wander. Whoop. And then you get experienced, and then you get stupid and take your hand off the wheel and pick up a coffee and back on the road again, and you do this and you get confident. It's like, it's no big deal. But the first time around, it's like, ugh. I remember one time, this is funny, this is before I met my wife, and I thought there was a girl that I liked, and she was playing soccer, and I took her, she hurt her knee or something, and I took her to the St. Paul's, the emergency hospital, University Hospital in Saskatoon, and when you get off of Circle Drive, you got a big corner to go on there, and she put her arm around me and just touched my hair. Well, I hit that stinking median like nothing else. It's like, my concentration went out the window. My focus was gone. How embarrassing is that? You're 16 years old, and you think you got the dream girl of your life, and just does this, and it's like, boom, boom. I didn't see that coming. How do you recover from that? Jeez. That relationship was over. It's focus. So much in life gets us off focus. We can drive down the highway and someone give us sign language. Man, the focus is gone. We drove beside a vehicle one time, and I got that bird given to me, and I thought, I'm going to teach you a lesson. I stepped on the gas, pulled up beside him, and I was going to say a few words. All my wife and my kids ducked like I was the only one in the car. You're so embarrassing. Just tell him, you don't do that to me, you know. It's like, I drove right beside him, and I was telling him what I thought. He couldn't hear anything, but it didn't matter to me. He just knew I was mad. And everybody's ducked under the seats, under the dash, and they're all hiding because this is embarrassing. We lose our focus, right? It's life. We will do that. We get choices to make. We can get back into focus. Someone says something to us. It's like, oh yeah, you want to get into it? Let's get into it. Focus. See, when you know where you're going, the obstacles are not a problem. They're an opportunity. We got to have the right focus. And he challenges us here, keeping your eyes on Jesus. The word keeping means you are focused, you are targeted. Where he is, you just keep your focus. Just keep your focus, because it's always shifting, but you're keeping your focus. Why? Because you know when you watch him, he will never lead you astray wrong. We want to be successful. We don't want to go through life blindfolded. Keep our eyes on Jesus. Our object will determine the direction we go. We got to stay focused. There's another thing that he says there, and I think this is important because he doesn't say it directly, but we can pull it out. He says, we do this by keeping our eyes on Jesus. And then he says, Jesus is our champion who initiates and perfects our faith because of the joy waiting him. He endured the cross. In other words, he went through hell for us. He can chart the way. So that tells me not only do we have the right focus, but also because in verse 1 of chapter 12, it says we're surrounded by such a huge cloud of witnesses. The second thing I think is important for us if we want to succeed in our life and achieve the things that God wants us in to walk this walk of faith is we have to learn from others. We've got to learn from others. That's why having the right people around us is so important, because they've gone through stuff that we have yet to go through. Sometimes we've gone through stuff that they can learn from us. We got to learn from others. These witnesses in chapter 12 and verse 1, that we're surrounded with, he's writing here, he says that you're surrounded with are people that have set examples, that have gone through things, that have dealt with stuff and worked through things and had to make decisions and navigate through different aspects of their life. But we have them to follow as an example. Look, they can do it, so can we. I don't know about you, but that's life-giving stuff, knowing that what you go through, I can learn from. And sometimes we don't learn from that. Sometimes we have to learn it our hard way. And sometimes we tell our kids and people around, I had to learn the hard way, you know. My dad sat down, my mom sat down and told me all this stuff, but I thought I knew better, but I should listen, right? People around us are there. People that are around us should be there to be the champion of our life, because they've gone through stuff too. They've made dumb decisions and bad things and things like that, and they've wiped off poop from other people, and they probably pooped on other people. I don't know, but I'm just thinking. Let's be honest, sometimes we do that. We got to learn from others. We have to always learn to make adjustments to our journey. Our journey is never set in stone, but it's a life series of decisions that we make and the things that we do, and we can always make adjustments. One bad decision doesn't have to lead to another and to another. One bad decision can lead to us readjusting and making a good decision. Sometimes we really do something dumb and we wish we could undo it, and we can undo it, but we can change where we go from there. And if we go alongside other people and help them do the same thing without pointing out their faults and telling them how dumb they are, and look, there's so much poop on you, like I can't stay away, like, oh, go clean yourself. But rather, if we're people that come alongside and said, that's not who you are. I know you're better than that. I know you're greater than that. And we want to, where can I help? How can I help? We have to learn from other people. There's a third thing that I think is important in this passage of Scripture too, and it's emphasized all through these first two verses, and it has the idea of we have to learn to stay the course. We got to remember it's a journey. We're running a race. Not because we're scared, because we know where we're going. We're running the race. I think I used that illustration many times before. I was probably 14 years old, and we got into provincials, and I did a 5,000-meter race. And when the gun went off, I took off like it was a 60-meter race. And I bolted in front of all those people. I thought, I'm going to win this thing. I am going to win this thing. Someone came up beside me about probably 60 meters in where I was starting to gas out already. And he says, you better pace yourself. There's a long road ahead. It's like, you just want to distract me. But he's right. He was right. We're going to have to learn to stay the course. There's things that are going to be in our way. There's obstacles. There's all that stuff that comes about. But we have to learn to stay the course. Not necessarily stay the direction we're going if we're going in a wrong direction. We have to stay the course. It's easy. It's easy to give up. Well, I'm just going to buck out for a little while and just take a break and figure it out. It's easy to do that. That's why he says here, let's run with endurance the race. I like it when I played hockey growing up, and I come up the left side of the boards, and there's me and a defenseman, and I wind up with a slap shot, and the goalie goes down to lift it up there, and it goes past his shoulder, and I see the net lift up. It's like, yes. Everybody's cheering. Coming back to the bench, you're high-fiving everybody going by. That's the power of team. We celebrate each other's accomplishments. And we help each other out when we haven't reached them. How do we do this? We've got to have the right focus. I could give you example after example of where my focus has been off. But you know what? I would be preaching to the choir because all of you have those same examples where you have been off focus. So instead of mourning and gloating over it and feeling like we're victims, I want to change that. I want to be able to learn to strip those things off. Just like when I'm hot, I take some parts clothing off to keep me cool. I want to strip that off. I don't want to be discouraged when I miss the mark, because all it is an indication I can make adjustments. And so if we are that way to other people, we are part of the solution, not part of the problem. And I don't know about you, but the longer I serve Jesus and the more he becomes real in my life, he is never like that. He's always solution-oriented, never problem-focused. I love that. Most of my life was problem-focused. But he's solution goal-oriented. I love it. The right focus. We've got to learn from others. Why is it so hard to make adjustments? Why is it so hard to make adjustments? I think some of us are embarrassed when we make this, because we don't want to admit we didn't make the right choice, and so we want to cover it up instead of making that adjustment. Can you imagine someone driving down the highway that's bound and determined? I got behind this wheel, and if I want to turn left, I will turn left. If that means I'm in the ditch, then I'm in the ditch. So be it. It's like, make adjustments. Oh, there's a stop sign now. What do we do? Make adjustments. We have to make a right or left turn. What do we do? Make adjustments. There's nothing wrong with making adjustments. In fact, we can be empowered. We can empower each other to make adjustments because life is a journey. And the process is just as important as the end result. Make adjustments. Learn from each other. And then lastly, stay the course. It's easy to quit. Oh, it didn't turn out. I'm not doing that ever again. I'm giving that, forget that. I'm giving up now. It's like, no. Let's not give up. Let's put on our persistent clothes and our persistence and our endurance. And let's stay the course. Because God has created us to be people that succeed in life. Amen?